Hello friends, welcome back to my booktube channel. My name is Braden Books. If this is your first time here, get ready to talk books, and if you're coming back, then welcome. You know me, we gotta do a little of the chopstick. It's gotten to that point where it's so low. I hope that you all... Jesus, my roommate's cat just left like 15 feet. Remus? Anyway, I'm in my pajamas as we speak that have really cute snowmen on them. It's not Christmas anymore. We are in between that awkward time of Christmas and New Year's, so happy holidays, I guess. I've actually managed to get through a lot of my TBR. So today we're gonna do the hyped books, which is mostly my YA hyped books that I have finally checked off, plus an adult, I think one very hyped adult book that I'm excited to get into. Did you hear that? You guys! I feel like I live in a cat sanctuary sometimes. What was I saying? Oh yes, so if you're new to the channel, go ahead, click that subscribe button, ring the bell so that you're notified. If you're interested in checking out what I'm reading or sneak peeks of what I rated all of these books, you can check my Goodreads account at goodreads.com/thebraden. Let's get into it. One that was on my TBR that I had forgotten that I had read was One of Us is Lying, and it's by Karen M. McManus. I really liked this book. I gave it 4 stars out of 5. If you could think of Pretty Little Liars meets The Breakfast Club. McManus also just came out with a sequel this year as well, which is One of Us is Next, which I've also heard really great things about. So basically you do follow the brain, Bronwyn, you follow the beauty, Addie, the criminal, Nate, the athlete, Cooper, and Simon, the outcast. I have to reference because I read this like a month and a half or 2 months ago. Apologies. But they are all basically brought together over this thing, and in detention, not a spoiler because it happens in the beginning of the book, one of the boys collapses and dies. Basically, it's figuring out which one of them did it, how did they do it, and how did Simon, who is basically this blogger who stirs shit between everyone, like Gossip Girl style, the dirt that he had on people, how it comes out. So I was very eager to read it. It did not disappoint. I believe I read it in one day. It reads so quickly. You get all of the different perspectives of everyone that's in the group, and twists and turns and all of that. It's hard to not say much more without spoiling, and I'm trying to keep these reviews short because I don't want to take up too much space on my computer because poor. I'm not gonna say that, edit that out. Anyway, I'm not poor. I need to act like I come from money because then I'll get more money, right? That's how it works. Not that life is about money, but what am I saying? Basically, I loved it. I believe the only thing that kept me from giving this a 5 was a lot of it was a little predictable, and even the big twist, so to speak, I kind of oddly predicted, but you're not mad at the way it unfolds. I think McManus does a really good job of the teen thriller. A book that is now very near and dear to my heart is Felix Ever After. You follow Felix Love, who ironically enough has never been in love before. He is a transgendered boy, and he's black, queer, and transgendered, so it's a lot. And the book, he's basically trying to figure out his identity, if your identity can change, what happens when your identity is questioned, because basically someone hacks into his Instagram, finds his dead name, which is the name that he was born with, that he no longer identifies with. The book takes place in New York, and Felix is 17 years old, getting ready to go to college, really wants to go to Brown. He wants to prove to himself that he can get into a school that is Ivy League, because as you will find out in the book, basically Felix is just contemplating his worth, his mom left, and it's a single dad type situation, and they don't come from a lot of money, so Felix has a very interesting juxtaposition from everyone else who is pretty privileged in this art school. So you discover Felix discovering himself, what labels mean, sexuality, and his friends who really hold him together, like Ezra, new friends, lovers, interests, and just the quest for love and self-love. I read this today in 3 hours or less. I'm a quick reader in general, which is how I'm able to get through books so quickly. I was in the IB program.
Shout out to my international baccalaureate people!
Because of IB, we were constantly having to read books. Like, Remus, can you not? I'm filming! Hey! Remus! Because of the IB program, long story short, I now basically can churn out essays and read books like nobody's business. So that's how I'm able to get through all of these so quickly. I was just really shocked at how quickly I read Felix Ever After. I just love him and Ezra, his friends, the way that they set up everything. I could predict certain things that ended up happening, but once again, the way that Case and Calendar just writes things in just this beautiful way. Not too much exposition or description, just really great, quick, snappy dialogue. It's funny, it's sad, it's heartbreaking. I swear to God, filming this video is like basically being a professor in a class where no one gives a fuck about what you're saying. Stop it, I'm trying to do something. I know you don't understand. I'm derailing. I've had too much coffee today. I need to make more tea. I just bought some English breakfast tea, which I'm very excited about. Anyway, I could not talk Felix Ever After up more than I already have, and I will continue to shout it until the cows come home. I think every LGBTQ center across America, across the world, should have a copy of this book. This thought of we're constantly learning about ourselves, and identity is always a question. And also like outing, like cyberbullying, those are topics. Obviously trigger warnings are in effect if you're going to read this book, but I highly recommend it. And as a queer person, certain things like pride parades that I remember being like, it's just so much. And then as an adult and an openly queer man and proudly queer individual, I remember going to my first pride parade and just like crying. And there's a moment like that in this that's shared with a stranger, and it's so beautiful because it's so real. I think once you come to terms with yourself and your own authenticity, you become so powerful, and everything that you were embarrassed of before becomes something you're incredibly proud of. Oh, and I forgot to say, Felix Ever After is being adapted into an Amazon TV show. I cannot wait to watch it. More stories, more trans stories, more non-binary stories, more gay stories, more stories where gay, trans, non-binary, lesbians, everyone, bisexuals, everyone actually gets to tell their story instead of James Corden or a straight identifying man. Speaking of the trans experience, we have Cemetery Boys. So I told you, I'm reading a lot of Height's books. Cemetery Boys should be turned into a huge franchise. I'm just saying, a openly trans brujo? I mean, sorry for the kitty scurries you're gonna be hearing. Pause. It's driving me insane. That's why I've literally had to stop and start like 25 times. It is so beautiful. It really surrounds the Latin culture. The Day of the Dead is very prevalent. In it, you follow Yadriel, who is of course our protagonist of the story. He comes from a very magical family. He wants to become a part of the Brujos, except his family knows that he's trans, so they won't accept him as a true Brujo because he wasn't born a man. So Yadriel, in his attempts to become a Brujo, basically goes through the whole Quince ceremony on his own. His friend Maritza? Yeah, his friend Maritza, who I absolutely love. She has pink hair and is just like that bitch. She basically helps wield him a little amulet, so that a little sword, type thing so that he can basically perform the ritual, talk to the Lady of Death. So basically he has a ceremony with Lady Death and it works, and he's able to like have powers in that way and can basically talk to the souls, etc. He realizes, well, she accepted me, but my family won't accept me, so he goes about this whole journey just to prove to his family that he is a boy. And I just think that is so, I mean, these trans stories are so important because I'm a gay man, but I can't identify with the trans experience, but I love learning about it because it's so powerful. The realization of knowing that you are not in the right body and that you genuinely want to be your authentic self, it's gorgeous. Try not to cry. It's not happening. I'm not crying. This is one of those like, no, we're not doing it. I cried so randomly yesterday. I watched this YouTuber who like lives off the grid. I've been very into cottagecore recently. Shout out to darling Desi. I'm obsessed with your channel. Check her out. Her aesthetic is perfect. His cousin is murdered, Miguel, and he's trying to find out who murdered his cousin. Along the journey, he basically discovers this ghost that he summons that's not Miguel. And he's like,
"You're not Miguel, who are you? You're not my cousin." And Miguel's like, "Joke's on you, I'm a hot bad boy ghost and I'm so charismatic and I'm gonna help you."
So it's the two of them basically trying to figure out A, who killed Miguel, but also who killed Julian. They basically become this really fun tag team along with their friend Maritza, and it's the combination of adventure, of family, of the same identity problems that were found in Felix, and it's just a fun ride. I really hope that Disney gets off of their like horse of like, you know, doing the Love Simon spin-off but then being like, no, this is too much for Disney Plus. Like, I don't know, I hope that they take a story like Cemetery Boys under their wing and actually do something with it, because I think this story needs to be seen and read and heard on a big scale. I personally do believe that this is a 5-star. I really like the hype because just what it's doing, like Felix, is just so important. So anyway, I've talked long enough about it. Definitely check it out. I kind of predicted, but didn't predict some of the turns and twists, and I just could see it visually. It was stunning. Someone was like, oh yeah, Coco vibes, and I'm like, well yes, because Day of the Dead. Yeah, wow, what books didn't I like? I promise, actually no, these were all really strong books. On to the next, because we only have 2 more left. I actually almost got into drag for this specifically, but it's Sunday and I've just been lounging and reading, so not today. Not today, Diane. However, it is The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta. Cemetery Boys, of course, by Aiden Thomas. I forgot to say that. See, I'm new at this booktube thing. The Black Flamingo is written in prose and also was such a quick read, and in my opinion should literally be like the Bible. Everyone should have one. Not that everyone should have a Bible, but you know, when you go to a hotel, there's the Bible in the bedstand. This should be there instead. I'm just saying. The Black Flamingo is amazing. You follow Michael. He is half Greek from his mom's side and half Jamaican from his father's side, but he never really feels Greek or black enough. And you really do follow him from childhood pretty much all the way to like adulthood, where he is now in London and in the drag scene and truly discovers himself and his persona as the Black Flamingo, and the realization that actually it is cool to stand out amongst a sea of pink flamingos. Love the idea of that. Obviously the Stonewall Book Award, they did too. It's been in lots of YA book clubs, but I love that Dean Atta decided to write in prose for this. Not only is the rhythm and the pacing so quick because of that, there's a beat to it. There's a rhythm that you wouldn't get if this were not in prose. I was able to read this so quickly too. I think I said that a million times, but it's so interesting because I am not Greek or black. However, I could relate to pretty much all of the gay queer stuff from the Barbie dolls, which I actually wrote an essay at USC in one of my classes about wanting a Barbie doll, and specifically the moment when I was in a KB Toys in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, in the Silver Lake Mall, and which I don't even know if it's still there. I wanted a Barbie really badly when my parents asked me, like, what do you want? And at that point, shame was pretty irrelevant to me, but it was one of my very first times of feeling the shame of turning to a Barbie doll who was gorgeous, and my parents looking at me like, what the hell? Why? I grew up Catholic, and that's a whole nother thing on its own. And this isn't therapy, but I do remember a sinking feeling and then being like, well, why don't you want a G.I. Joe? And you know, it's that traditional stuff that you see in all the movies. He experiences a very similar thing, but it turns into a beautiful, flourishing moment for him. And I remember going to my girlfriends' houses and playing Barbies with them, and the freedom. And it's all a book about finding freedom and power in your authenticity. I mean, truly, I'm glad I read these books this week in particular, because the holidays can be really hard, and I think we can forget that, like, it's okay if we don't have a significant other. Like, we should also get to really enjoy being by ourselves, and like, I'm single because I choose to be. I'm not gonna settle. I do feel lonely, obviously, but that's why I love to read stories like this, because it connects me to the human experience and reminds me of my own strength in being a queer man. Our stories should be told, particularly by queer people, because it's sad, but a lot of people write us off. Really pleasantly surprised, and am so thankful to these queer out artists, really, because it makes me feel seen. I gave it a 5 stars. Lots of 5 stars. And just to be clear, like, I don't just give 5 stars away. Like, these books were genuinely good. This one I did last because, let's be frank, people literally can't shut the F up about this book. Oh my goodness, it's the best story you've ever heard, and timeless, and all of these things. So I was like, this is a lot of hype. But it is The Invisible Life of ADDIE LaRUE, of course, by V.E. Schwab. I'm leaning into the camera for this one. First of all, I have to start out this review by saying I have never read V.E. Schwab or Victoria Schwab, either her YA or adults. I have only seen people like jizz over her. And I was actually really pleasantly surprised. I am a new fan of V.E. Schwab, 1000%. I want to read Vicious next. That's the one that seems most appealing to me. I think her writing is stunning. It's poetry in motion. I can see it. It's very cinematic. Age of Adeline is kind of like a similar concept, which I thought was funny because her name's Adeline too, and it's Adeline, but it's the whole thing of, you know, a woman going through, like, always being young and eternal, but going through years and all of the other people aging around her, but she doesn't, played by Blake Lively. This kind of feels like an extension of that, except add in the mix of the devil. The devil makes a pact, and his name is apparently Luke. Luke. It takes place in France. The devil makes a pact with ADDIE LaRUE, who is at the point named Adeline. She is to be wed to this man she does not want to marry. So she basically runs away. Same. Julia Roberts runaway bride vibes. She runs away from Richard Gere into the forest and is just so desperate to, like, not be there. She doesn't want to be rooted down to anyone. She wants to live forever, basically. She wants freedom. And she's in her lovely little folklore cottagecore dress, and she, like, pleads to all of the gods, and they always say, don't ask the gods who come after midnight or in the dark, and lo and behold, she conjures up the devil, and he says,
hey, I can give you what you want, and, you know, how long do you want to live?
She says forever, and he's like,
okay, well, you gotta give me your soul.
She's like, okay. So they make the deal, and he basically torments her for the rest of her life, because he just wants her soul. And she doesn't want to give it up. She just wants to continue to do her own thing, and she does. I mean, it's 1700s to 2014. Split between her life, how she made the pact, when she left her town, her small village, going back to it, going to Paris, going to all these other places. Then it hops over to present day where she's lived, and she's still in New York, and she's doing her thing. But the catch of all of this is that every time people meet her, they forget her as soon as she leaves, except for this one guy named Henry, who she meets in New York in, well, 2014. I loved the concept. I thought it was great. I was like, okay, I see this. Cinematically, scene-wise, it all was perfect. I feel like this is cottagecore porn. I'm referencing cottagecore a lot, but if you don't know what cottagecore is, it's like, basically came from Gen Z. It's like the aesthetic of wanting to live a minimalistic but kind of like fairy tale life existence, i.e. Anne of Green Gables. So in the middle of nowhere, frolicking, making tea, old-fashioned hot chocolate, and reading books, and, you know, Wuthering Heights and Little Women while you're frolicking and foraging and those kind of things. Shout out to darling Desi once again. She won't see this, but anyway, love her. But that's what it felt like, rustic vibes, like French, Parisian, lavender, you know what I mean? Like, it was very much that. So aesthetically and world-wise, I friggin' loved it. Like, I loved the concept and the idea of like being forgotten, and how artists create works of art that will live on past them. And it was very clear that ADDIE LaRUE was an extension of V. Schwab or Victoria, and you could feel it, like a lot of her own turmoil she basically put into this book. I don't know if she had a similar relationship with someone or whatever, but it turns into a love story once again with herself, but also this fellow Henry, and also how the devil is connected to her and how she's attached to him, and how they are the only ones who ever remember each other. So how like important that is, and the meaning of connection and loneliness. And so I felt like it was actually a perfect book to read for Christmas, because it felt very like Dickensian almost. Oh, here's what your life could be, and all those things. And I just thought it was beautiful. In my opinion, and this is probably not like a popular opinion. At first, it was honestly between a 3 or a 4 for me, which is shocking because everyone and their sister is giving this 5s. And it was mainly because I felt like she said what she wanted to say honestly halfway through. And then the book was a little too long for what she was trying to say. Like, certain things happen and you're like, oh, but honestly I was kind of expecting certain things that happened to happen. So once again, I wasn't disappointed that I kind of like guessed it, but I also was like, oh, like, duh, that makes sense. It's very repetitive, which also leads to the fact that, so it's her life, so that's kind of awesome, because whether or not she wanted it to be intentionally that way, it is. So you kind of do have like the Groundhog's Day of like, oh, she just left the room, and then she comes back in, it's like, oh, hi, nice to meet you. Oh, I just met you 5 minutes ago, kind of thing, like over and over again. Also, take a shot of vodka every time she says the 7 stars constellations. She literally refers to these 7 freckles on her face as constellations like all the time. Like, I get it, it's beautiful imagery, but like, so anyway, I just felt like the story was sold to me as this grand epic kind of, and it is in the way that it sweeps like lots of time periods and stuff, but I just can't help but feel like when it's all said and done, it's really like a kitchen sink drama romance between a few individuals and entities, and their attachment to each other, and the non-attachment, and the difference of putting down roots and also being free and being your own agent. So I feel like, yeah, like I said, it was not this epic thing that I thought it was going to be, because even though a lot happens, it's then like pretty much a lot of scenes between her and the devil, or her and Henry, and then like a few of their friends and stuff, but it doesn't really delve into this like crazy fantasy realm that people kind of alluded it would be. So that was kind of not a disappointment, but it was different for me. So all in all, really glad I read it. I give it 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was a success, although this is the problem with BookTube and hyping up books. I thought this was for sure gonna be a 5. When all is said and done, I just think that it's gorgeous, so I couldn't possibly give it a 3, but it doesn't warrant a 5 hype. It's still beautiful, and I'm sure Spielberg is turning it into a movie as we speak. So, there you have it. Bam! In honor of the Black Flamingo. It's not Christmas, and I'm still drinking coffee out of a Christmas mug. Cold. I hope you liked my wrap-up for the books that I read this last week that were on my TBR for overhyped queer YA books, as well as The Invisible Life of ADDIE LaRUE. I'm doing videos weekly as of now, kind of as I read and continue. I'm new to all of this, so I'm really trying to find a format that works for me. But I really just think I'm gonna do, like, you know, hubs of books. I have a bunch that are coming from the library this week, including...
Oh shit, I didn't...
Also, I was going to add The Poppy War because I read that. No wonder I don't have the physical copy here, but I'm gonna wait to do The Poppy War because I'm gonna do it as a series. I have The Dragon Republic on my bedstand as we speak, so I'm planning to read that, as well as The Court of Roses and Thorns. I'm saying it wrong, but the big Dick Fairy books I am gonna be venturing into, and I'm very excited for that. So comment down below if you enjoyed what you saw, if you have questions, if you have suggestions for books, thoughts on the books that I talked about. If there are other popular series that I should read, or books like A Little Life that are good enough for reading vlogs, that's kind of what I'm gonna break into next, I think. But thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully this video isn't too long. Have a happy new year if I don't see you before then. Once again, I just love doing this, and it's kind of nice just like having a baby channel. I hope you guys stay cool. I hope that you have a fresh lease on the year. Just wake up tomorrow, breathe as soon as you get up, look in the mirror and say, I'm alive. And that's really a gift. Anyway, thanks for coming to my channel. All right, goodbye. Until the next one.